Well, good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our second quarterly open board meeting of the year. My name is Tony Guglielmo. I'm the chair of TransLink. I would also like to thank those who are live streaming today, meeting either through Facebook or Twitter. Thank you for joining us today. And so at this point, I'd like to call the meeting to order. So first, I want to acknowledge that TransLink operates throughout the traditional territories of the Lower Mainland Coast Salish peoples, and specifically that this meeting is being held in the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam Nation. Now, before we begin, there's a few housekeeping items that I'd like to address. As you know, TransLink takes the safety of its customers, employees, the board, and the public very seriously, so I'd like to take a moment and just share some safety protocols for you. So first, the nearest emergency exit is through the door on your right, down the hall and to your left. So in the event of an alarm, please exit in an orderly fashion and meet at the muster station, which is in the northeast parking lot. For those using mobility devices, please do not use the elevator, but gather in the vicinity of the stairwell and enter into the safe refuge area. Now, Kwantlen University has floor wardens that will report your location to the fire department so they can prioritize your safe exit from the building. And of course, in the unlikely event of an earthquake, please remember to drop cover and hold on until the shaking has stopped. So a couple of acknowledgements before we begin. First, I'd like to acknowledge that Chief Officer Dave Jones, who's joined the Metro Vancouver Transit Police team in April, is here for his first meeting. I was actually speaking to Chief. Oh, there he is, hand up. Welcome to TransLink. Thank you. Second, I'd like to acknowledge that this is Hayden Atchison's last open board reading, as he will be retiring at the end of August. So Hayden, I just want to say, Hayden's retiring at the end of August, but he actually was going to retire, I think, over a year ago. And then we had this issue of needing someone to run our rail company, and Hayden volunteered to do that. And he's done an excellent job, and we really appreciate you, Hayden, stepping in and doing that for us. And so I know Hayden before he came to TransLink 9 years ago. So Hayden, you've done planes, you've done buses, you've done trains. I'm not sure, have you done automobiles? C-bus. Okay. So you and John Candy have a lot in common. Anyway, we really appreciate everything you've done for TransLink, Hayden. We wish you all the best as you move on into enjoying other parts of your life other than TransLink. So we have a lot discussed today, and so we're going to begin our meeting with items in the consent agenda. So there's 2 items. Does anyone have any issues or questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, can I have someone maybe move to accept? Moved by Murray, seconded by Larry, all in favor? Unanimous approval, great, thank you. The next part of our meeting is our public delegations, and we do have one speaker who's going to speak to us, Mr. Daryl Lim. I'm not sure if you're here. Daryl, welcome. If you could maybe come to the table. And just to remind you that we do have a time limit of 5 minutes, if you can keep your remarks to that. And thank you for coming today and sharing your thoughts.
Good morning to board members and Mr. Desmond. Yes, I have an issue to raise. Is regarding this. You see, what happened is usually I take the bus from my grandmother's place to my home on a Sunday, and usually I take the bus at this bus stop number 51613 at about 10:30, and starting from last year, 1st of July, there have been very poor connection to get to this East 2nd and Rupert, because you see, in the past, the buses were actually the same buses from 26 to 27, changed to 27, but now the 26 has been taken off service, so another bus will come, but the connection has been very poor since last year. I have sent my feedback to this online form, but still nothing is done. So this is what I hope that you look into it. Secondly, is regarding this panhandling at the SkyTrain station, whatever. I really feel very bad to always have to contact transit police. I feel very bad that, to ask them to look into this about panhandling. So it has been numerous times, especially at this waterfront station, Canada Line. There is one lady, her name is Margaret. She has been told by transit police on many occasions to leave, but she keep on coming back. So I hope you all can look into this method to deal with this panhandling, because I think it's getting annoyed, and also has been very regularly this problem. And the third problem sometimes I face is this, like when I swipe this fare card into the fare gates, on many occasions people will try to squeeze behind me and trying to get in, but I will make sure that I try to stop them and say that everybody contributes to paying fare. Why do you have to evade? So I have some altercation with these people who try to evade fare a couple of times, and I complained to the transit police, and they told me not to have any altercation with them. So this is two of my complaint, and I have suggestion too. My suggestion is to suggest that along 41st Avenue to UBC, why not have a beeline starting from Joy Station to go to UBC? And the second suggestion is from Metro Town Station, have a beeline to UBC too. So this is my suggestion. Anyway, thank you very much for all of you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lim, for those comments, and I know that staff have been making a note of that.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for coming today.
I can, on the Joyce to UBC, that is the beeline that will start in January of next year.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our next item in the agenda, and we're going to hear from Kevin for his CEO report.
Okay, you have to hear from me again. So I'd say I'll be brief, but I've just a lot of things that to bring the board up to date. First, I just want to start out with ridership through May of this year. The ridership continues to grow, perhaps at a somewhat more moderate rate than in the last couple of years, which is perhaps not surprising since the ridership growth has been so phenomenal. But year-to-date boardings through May, system-wide 4.5%, and year-to-date journeys also up 4.5%. And we're seeing increases pretty much across the board in all of our forms of service. Actually, in May, led by HandyDart, which saw a 6.7% increase going forward. So the demand for the system remains, and it continues to grow and continues to suggest why we need to continue to be adding service as much and as fast as we are able. We concluded several weeks ago our Surrey-Langley public outreach for the refresh of the transportation plan, most particularly focused on the Fraser Highway SkyTrain proposal. It was a really, really good, robust public engagement project. Over a 3-week period, we heard from over 21,000 citizens, 17,000 of them from the cities of Surrey and the Langleys. And that large number of responses certainly demonstrates a great deal of public interest in what we're doing and transportation. In fact, I think that just echoes what you heard from Larry in his remarks downstairs in the AGM, and the continuing public interest in what the future holds for public transportation and mobility. And that 21,000 response was, in fact, the second largest public engagement in TransLink's history. In addition to asking about public opinion concerning the SkyTrain proposal, we also asked respondents, both in the face-to-face and particularly on the online survey, to rank their values associated with mobility. And the top 3 values, perhaps not surprisingly, but I think they continue to reinforce the directions we need to head in designing our transit system. Number one, predictable travel times on how to get people to their destinations faster, efficient use of public monies, always very important. We have a profound responsibility to spend those dollars wisely. And thirdly, a comfortable and safe experience. Mr. Lim just mentioned issues of comfort, convenience, and safety in the transit system. We're using that feedback to bring back to the board and the Mayor's Council first in July when we have a draft or a preliminary business case for the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain. But it will help to not only inform the Fraser Highway corridor, but as well the other transportation challenges, particularly in Surrey. Next, we heard a lot about this downstairs at the AGM, the T2050 public engagement. We kicked it off on May 3rd. We saw the bus downstairs as the backdrop to the AGM. It's the kickoff, the public side kickoff to our 30-year update. It's the first of what will be 3 public engagement touch points actually between now and next spring. We're looking for a really, really robust engagement exercise. We want to hear from everybody. And again, thanks to Larry for giving the shout out for that. As you heard from Bowen Ma, she gave a nice shout out to our website, transport2050.ca. Since May 3, we've already gotten over 12,000 survey responses, and on the website you can punch in your own ideas, your own dreams and aspirations. We've received over 1,000 ideas so far. So I really look forward to seeing how all those ideas come out, and you can kind of crowdsource and give a thumbs up to other people's ideas as well. Also, I think part of the fun element of the engagement in the website, we poll our customers through Instagram stories, where we provide, I think, sort of vignettes, and then we have questions such as, what do you like most about where you live, green space or city life? What concerns you more about Metro Van's future, congestion or commuting? What do you think, C-bus to Ambleside, yes or no? So the idea is to try to elicit ideas and also elicit the public's values, because a lot of what the team is doing on the Transport 2050, it's not just planning technicians doing modeling of how the population, how it will set out and what the mobility needs are. We need to understand the values of our communities so that the plan ultimately well reflects that. During the course of the summer, our engagement team will be very, very busy. Not only, of course, keeping up with the website, but we have at least 20 community events between now and mid-September scheduled. Lynn Valley Days in North Vancouver, Canada Day celebrations in Vancouver, Surrey, and Lions Bay, the Catsalano Festival in Kitts, Richmond World Festival, just some of the examples. So those of you watching or listening in on the board meeting today, show up to those events and go to the website to find out where the events are going to be. On Friday of this week is National Indigenous Peoples Day. And of course, TransLink operates and serves on the shared traditional territories of the 46 Coast Salish First Nations within Metro Vancouver. And I'm happy to say this is the first time the TransLink enterprise will be formally celebrating this event. We're doing that with an employee event on Friday to help build customer awareness. And externally, customers will hear announcements at select Expo and Millennium line platforms and see information across our social media channels, encouraging the general public to take transit to Indigenous People Day events throughout the region. On the customer experience front, a few weeks ago, we had a fun media event announcing the first installation of our digital kiosks in partnership with our advertising company, Lamar. Just another feature of the way the general public and particularly visitors can engage with and understand how to use the transit system, not only, of course, the lines on the map on the trains and buses, but actually all the features of our region that our transit system can take people to. We're going to be installing 50 of these state-of-the-art touchscreen kiosks at SkyTrain stations, along the Expo and Millennium lines, at West Coast Express stations, the C-bus terminals, park and ride locations, and select bus loops. The first kiosk was installed at the new head house for the Surrey Central station. and Joyce Collingwood West Station House and Edmond stations have now also been installed. Columbia and Commercial Broadway stations are next up. So look for the coming rollout going forward. A few weeks ago as well, we also launched a really cool advertising and awareness campaign that we call Dine the Line. If you haven't seen the videos yet, look for them. It's a food and drink focused campaign that highlights some of the region's top places to grab a bite of drink along our SkyTrain lines. It's the cheapest tourist ride in the region to get you to a lot of great places. We partnered with West Coast Food and 13 destination marketing groups. The campaign encourages people in the region and visitors to hop on transit to enjoy a delicious day out. There are 3 videos that highlight 3 types of experiences. Brewery and bites on the M line, on the Millennium line, dim sum and to dinner via the Canada line, and world cuisine via the Expo line. So far, I understand through our various different social media channels, we have some 80,000 impressions so far of the video. People can find the video at westcoastfood.ca/dine the line to see the video and see the maps. So if you haven't taken a look, take a look. They're very cool, and there's so many great places to visit in this region, and you can get there via SkyTrain. Our van pool program is finally off the ground. In early February, we launched a 1-year pilot in partnership with Moto Cooperative Car Share, as well as and with UBC employees. So the program is now 10 van pools in operation, with some 48 participants taking people to UBC. It's UBC employees, I believe exclusively, not at this point students. The pilot's part of our overall TransLink Tomorrow program, in part funded through the Mayor's Plan, which is a commitment to continuously explore and test innovative ways to improve mobility in Metro Vancouver. I personally am really want to help see this thing grow. It is a good adjunct to our fixed route public transportation system, so we're delighted with Moto, our partner, that we were able to get it off the ground, and I hope that we learn quite a bit from this particular pilot and find ways to continue to expand the program. Related to that, on March 26th, we launched our second open innovation call, and so far we have received 45 submissions through the open innovation call. The Open Innovation Program, we look to partner with industry leaders, innovators, academics, policymakers to collaborate on new mobility type services to really accelerate interesting and good ideas. This year's Open Innovation Call theme is customer amenities in services, thinking about how we can make the customer experience at TransLink's transit stops and stations more enjoyable. As we heard from one of the speakers downtown this morning, we probably need to get better lighting on our maps at our bus loops and so forth. The deadline for submissions was April 30th, and the team is now sifting through the proposal. Related to that, tomorrow, I believe we'll be formally announcing a partnership with the Vancouver Economic Commission's Tech Deployment Network. We've signed an MOU with my counterpart at the VEC. This is something I'm really, really excited for us to get involved in. The goal of our partnership with the VEC is to bring together innovators and startups in this region with large organizations like us, like TransLink, municipalities, to accelerate innovative solutions. The agreement commits TransLink to piloting and adopting new solutions for each specific logistical or sustainability challenge, while offering our assets, our staff time, our facilities, other infrastructure as ways to demonstrate these types of accelerating solutions. Our next step in the months ahead is to work with the partners through the VEC network to identify those common challenges and start putting out ideas to the business community. Beeline update. A few weeks ago, we announced the current start date for the 3 new Beelines, which will be January of 2020. A little bit behind schedule. We were hoping to launch the Beelines in the fall of this year. Getting all the work done, primarily the civil work, with some 10 jurisdictions that the 3B lines operate through, is taking a little bit of time, but we want to launch it and get it done right and have all the pieces in place, and we're feeling good about the January launch. The 3B lines, to remind you, is along 41st Avenue in Vancouver, connecting UBC to the Joyce Collingwood station, a question that was asked before. The Marine Main on North Shore from Phibbs Exchange to Park Royal, and Low Heat Highway connecting Coquitlam Central Station to Maple Ridge. So more to come on that, but we're very much looking forward to moving forward. And I just want to join Tony in welcoming Chief Jones to the family, and very much thanking Hayden for his service over this past year plus as the general manager and president of BCRTC. Hayden's going to leave BCRTC in a better place than he found it, and he's setting it up very well for our new president, general manager, an individual named Michelle Ledrock, who will be starting at BCRTC on August 15th. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kevin, for that report. Are there any questions for Kevin? Okay, I don't think there are any, so I'll ask our next speaker, Hayden, actually, to come up and talk to us about the BC Rapid Transit Company in terms of his report.
Good morning, and thank you for the kind words, much appreciated. I'm going to touch on the highlights, challenges of Q1. We have a good news story on maintenance, and that's why I've asked Dan just to spend a couple of minutes and go through a couple slides with you. You've heard from Vivian and myself over the years the challenges that we have at maintenance going forward. Very much an old system, was a mom and pop operation to a large extent, and as we're moving it into the new world with growth, there was a lot of changes that were needed. It was started with Vivian. We're starting to see the results of that. I'm very proud of that and wanted Dan, representing maintenance, to track you through that. I'll begin. Our challenge for the first quarter was really February, the snowstorm. The first day or two of the snowstorm, where we were not as prepared as best we should be. A number of reasons for that, but the reasons are just something we don't focus on, but what did we learn from it and what could we do going forward? So when we took the Q1 metrics, we of course work month by month, and so we expected to see the big hit for February and then better results as the months went through. So if you look at the top left hand, that's the employee lost time accidents. You can see that February was up and it's declined since then, and we're pleased with that. However, when we went over to passenger injuries, I was quite surprised by the results. I expected the spike in February, but when you look at March, April, and May, the numbers are not where we wanted them to be and not where we expected them to be. So what we did, well, I should say, I'll just start looking at my notes. Most of our passenger injuries are slips, trips, and falls at our stations. 10 injuries on board, but the rest of them are at our stations. And so we took a look at our protocols. We looked at our priorities on our protocols, and we made some changes and some really 100% inspections at all the stations. So what we started to do is every month, 100% station inspections. We're looking for any kinds of hazards that are out there for individuals. We're looking at all the complaints that are coming in, and we're reacting to it very quickly. We now have mandatory monthly safety meetings, each department. We have specific monthly themes to bring awareness regarding workplace hazards and incidents, and a real focus since we did the stand down in January on our safety. We're doing per field level hazard assessments, and we do them before a specific job, and then we go through it one more time before the job starts, as we make a lot of changes at stations and customer flows and issues like that. So we're making sure that we spend 1, 2, 3 times looking at all those changes before we open it up. We're doing risk assessments on all our operating procedures, whether they're safe or deemed to be unsafe. We're going through a whole process of assessing them. Overall, in safety, we're continuing with our safety management system upgrade going slower than I wanted it to be, but we've got a new focus on it. We have an acting director of safety that has come over from the bus company, Stephen. We're very appreciative of him being with us, and we put a real focus now on our safety management system. We're moving to leading indicators on safety, monthly safety meetings, the inspections that I spoke of, the site visits to address some of these issues. We're going to monitor those and see if it makes a difference on our stats as we go forward. New high visibility vests have been provided and are used on a daily basis now with our employees. Received a letter 10 days ago from WorkSafe BC Certificate of Recognition Program. I'd like to share a portion of one of the paragraphs. We have determined that the British Columbia Rapid Transit Company Limited met the eligibility criteria for CORE in 2018. As a result, the attached check is being awarded to your company in recognition of your commitment to raising the standard of worker health and safety in British Columbia. And with that was attached a check for $220,000. That was for 2018, so we're very pleased with that. As I mentioned, on-time performance, and when we looked at the monthly numbers and we looked at the Q1 results, when we break it down by month, it did show us what we thought we would see, that we took quite a hit in February. The good news is that in April, 97.5 is the best on-time performance that we have seen in our past, and so that's a good news story, and pleased to see that our on-time performance has done quite well since February. We had a lot to learn in February, and as I mentioned, we put a lot of criteria and processes in place next time around. Try to be as preventative as we can when we know snowstorm is coming up. I thought you'd be interested in this slide, and I just put this one in. So this is February. This is the snowstorm, and of course we would see the complaints go up. But if you look at February, the commendations, and those commendations are the good work that our frontline people did, our customers recognize it, and they took the time to let us know that they appreciate the hard work of our frontline staff. Our frontline staff worked very, very hard in the system. If you're out in the system, you would recognize that, and we really appreciate that. And so I wanted to share that with you. So even in bad times, our staff worked hard, and our customers recognize it, and we really appreciate it. I usually do state of good repair, but I'll turn that over to Dan, and then he'll talk a little bit about some of the progress as well.
Good morning. Last time I addressed the board, I was talking about everything that was facing us over the next 10 years. Today will be a little quicker and definitely dealing with some shorter term items here. I'll just be focusing on what's been happening this year with the maintenance division. As you know, the Expo line is over 30 years old, and the maintenance of this aging infrastructure is very critical to the safe and reliable service that we provide. So you can see on the slide just some of the stats of the work that has been performed here this year. Please remember that the Guideway work, this is the work that is happening in that 4 or 5 hour window that we have each day. So there's an immense amount of planning and coordination that is happening with all of these crews working really 24/7 in preparing that work, and the numbers may not look about 3.2 kilometers of rail replaced. I mean, that's a huge length of rail that's out there. So this program is going to continue for years for us. When we need to catch up to get back to that state of good repair. The next slide, we talked about the infrastructure Guideway side of things. There's the vehicle side of the maintenance world. Again, you can see the stats on the slide here. A lot of work goes in. It's a critical part of the business. Obviously, it is the vehicles that move the people for us. We have nearly 300 cars in our fleet, and some of these are over 30 years old. We've got refurbishment programs going on with some of the aging fleet because we want to extend their life. And again, these crews are working 24/7 to ensure that we have the safe and reliable vehicles that we need. The stats that are there are just from Q1 of this year. So there's a lot of, you see a lot of inspections going on there. Say the bus world inspections were every 6,000 kilometers. Here they're every 20,000 kilometers, but you can see that we're still doing hundreds and hundreds of these inspections. So it speaks to the number of kilometers that the trains are actually accumulating. Hayden had talked about some of that we're starting to see some of the improvements here. And so this is some really good news stuff that we can clearly see as we are moving forward. The whole focus of moving from reactive to proactive maintenance has been a journey that started really back in 2017, and we're slowly beginning to see the benefits of this. There's many different classes of assets out there that we're having to look at and we're having to implement improvements on. In 2017, we created something called the Maintenance Status Room, which collects the daily information of what's going on out in the system and what is creating problems for our customers. And we started compiling this information, looking at it over time, and we're able to see what specific assets are actually creating disruptions to service. And you can see things like track switches. We've got almost half as many switch issues going on today as we did a year ago. Trains being removed from service. And again, this is just a continuous improvement, focused approach that we're taking, and that is just part of the overall program of moving to the proactive maintenance. We got one more here. The Mark III.
I can touch on the Mark III.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Ann. I remember Mr. Ross asked me 2 board meetings ago where we were on the schedule with Bombardier. I think I reported out 30 to 60 days. Currently, we are in a delivery day of approximately 4 months. It's a lot of concern to us. We put a lot of effort into it. Their senior team has been out to meet us several times. Kevin's been involved at one of the meetings. We've expressed our concern. The importance of receiving these cars on time to put the service in that we promised to the public. That's an issue for us. They do listen to us. They do say the right things to us, and we do believe that they will pick up the schedule and we will be able to shorten trains 10 through 12 by 30 days or so. We're still hopeful of that. It is anticipated by train 12 that the delays will be down to the 3 months. The adjusted schedule now has trains 3 and 9 in service by the end of 2019, and now the remaining trains will be in service by Q2 of 2020. Our service increase is scheduled for September 2019, where we'll be adding some additional trains during the morning and afternoon peak service for our busiest periods. I'll just mention briefly Canada Line. Our senior team was in Korea meeting with Rodham last week on the deliveries. The current fleet expansion includes 12 trains, which of course are 2-car trains. It's 24 cars. First train is scheduled to be shipped the first week of July, arriving here in August. It should be ready for revenue service in November. A longer period of time. They don't have a test track. I've mentioned in previous meetings about the Kingston test track. We were able to save delivery times by using the Kingston test track. That's not the case at Canada Line. So all of that testing will be done here. When the train is ready in November, it will be substituted in. There will not be service increases, but it'll be substituted in their system as we go forward. The trains 2 to 4 delivered in October, 5 to 8 in December, and train 9 to 12 February 2020. We expect to see the service increases for Canada Line in March of 2020. And finally, to leave on a good note, Transit Police had a recognition ceremony recognizing citizens and employees. Very pleased that 9 of our employees were called and received the certificate of appreciation. Very pleased with that, and we've had their names up there for recognition. And that's my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Hayden and Dan. Any questions from the board? See Andy and then Marcella.
Let me echo my thanks and congratulations and wish you a happy retirement. I'm just looking here at the report that you issued to us around the snow plan. and hopefully next February you won't have to worry about it.
I hope so.
But I see the specific points that were taking place this February, specifically the preventive maintenance, running the trains overnight, etc., being prepared. Is this something that's going to be incorporated as an ongoing planning condition and become part of sort of a standard snowfall operational process?
Yes, it is, and it is in place when that snowstorm hit, and that was part of our issue, is that the forecast did not anticipate the snow. We were slow on the mark. We should have done those preliminary items to begin with, but the protocols that we're putting in place, maybe Dan wants to speak to it, is we will ensure that we will do those, even if it's an iffy forecast, we will go ahead and put all of that in place.
Yeah, and we're leveraging what we had at the bus company too. I was able to make the connections now, so that we were relying on kind of a single source for the weather forecast. Now we've got multiple sources for that weather forecast, trying to mitigate. And just honestly, the forecast didn't have that much weather impact to operations the way it was given to us. Now we've got multiple sources, so hopefully we can mitigate.
Thank you. I was sitting on a beach in Mexico watching it with a lot of interest when I saw it.
Okay, Marcella?
Thank you. Just a question with respect to the maintenance work, particularly the grinding. In the past, we've heard a lot of complaints about noise. Are you getting that this year?
You know, that hasn't been brought to my attention when we've gone through it.
We haven't heard anything,
No.
so I'm just wondering if you've heard any at your level. If
I'll drill down, look at it, and get back to you on it. But no, that is.
Thank you.
Many other items have come forward, but I haven't heard that one in particular.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Ann, and then Murray?
Thank you for putting safety first in your report and in your operational work. I just want to confirm that the board has a real commitment to safety, and we are prepared to do what you think might need to be done at the board level to enhance our commitment to safety. So it's just something, an open question really for you and all your colleagues. Second, I just had a question about how many or what percentage, and you may not know, of folks working in your area have a first aid training or take a first aid recertification. Do you have any sense of that?
I don't want to take a guess at it. I'll get
Yeah,
that
no, it's better
information
not
to
to
you.
guess, but it'd be great to know at a future meeting,
Sure.
really throughout the organization. I know we have people who are personally committed to have that education, but also as a organization, it might be great to see who we have and whether we are covered for ourselves and for the members of the public with first aid training.
I know we have ongoing training. We have refresher training. I see those courses. I don't know what the numbers are, but
The take-up numbers.
thank you. We'll
be
follow
interesting
up
to
with
know
that.
and find ways to encourage, because then we're always going to be faced with the unexpected. We have almost an infinite number of moving parts, so it's impossible to plan for everything. But first aid response is the first step.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Ann. Murray?
Thank you, Tony. The question I have is related to the implement or the utilization of the new cars on the Canada line. I was curious. You said that the trains are ending in February. You'll get all 12 trains by February, but the service increases aren't occurring till we have all 12. And I was curious, is it a refurbishment program on cars that are going to be replaced with the new trains as they come?
There's probably too many. There you go. There's too many. As you know, that's our P3 operator. It's not operated by Expo Millennium line. So as the cars are coming in, we also are in the process of negotiating the operating service increase with the concessionaire. So we still have some work to do. We know what kind of operating pattern we want and over what period of time. So there's the issue certainly of getting the vehicles commissioned, and then in terms of how the Canada Line operator wants to put the trains into service. It works a little bit different. Expo Millennium line, they've been putting the cars into service, not as a service increase. I think when they get the first, how many train sets, I think in September we're going to start adding service to the Expo Millennium line, and then again in the spring. But in Canada Line it works a little bit differently because of the contractual relationship.
Thanks. It's really one of logistics around the operator as opposed to the ability to deliver the service. So in other words, we're saying that the negotiations are the holdup. Is that?
It's not so much the holdup. We have, within the context of the contract, the ability to do a directive service, but I think in the context of how they operate and start adding service and the resources associated with that, that's the lead time that they would require. Yes.
Okay, Karen?
Hayden and Dan, thank you very much. And Hayden, again, thank you for your service. Appreciate it. I just had a quick question about the maintenance program. The maintenance success stories are fabulous. It's great to see those numbers and that success. As the equipment gets older, are there issues with getting parts? And if so, can we inventory parts to ensure that we can continue to keep the equipment moving and the service running?
Well, certainly, especially with the first order of the Mark I cars, things like the aluminum castings for the trucks and that are very hard to come by and order. We are inventorying parts. We're very much in pace with what's happening with manufacturers, and if they are going to obsolete parts out of their product line, we look for that opportunity to do final orders, and we bring in enough parts to see us through the life cycle of the asset.
I can share a little story with you, and it's to do with escalator parts. And so modern companies, of course, reduce inventory to save costs. And so we were looking at these old escalators. They were breaking down, parts were not available. And our issue was, let's go out and start inventorying some of those parts and not have to wait 3 or 4 months for those parts to be manufactured and then shipped over. So once in a while, it's worth building up an inventory and being able to have the supply ready to act quickly.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, Harj?
Thank you, Tony. Hayden, you touched on the $250,000 check for the core, but I think you sort of glossed over what the meaning of that core certification is. And maybe just for the benefit of the board, you could sort of tell us what led to that core certification, and because I think it's a very, very complex process, and there's a lot of little moving parts behind that. So I think it's really important for us to understand what that core certification really means.
Well, the core audit is one that happens in most years. Derek Stewart's probably better to speak to it than I am. We're always concerned when the core audit comes in. There's a number of findings. The auditors spend a significant amount of time with us. There were a number of findings in 2018. We worked hard on all of those. I wasn't sure that we were going to get a rebate. In fact, I didn't think we were. But we worked very hard going through the number of, I don't have the list with me of the number of findings, a significant amount. We take it very seriously. We work through and answer all the findings. We have manager meetings where we go through it all. We report back, and we completed the findings, I believe, about 6 weeks ago, submitted it in, and was pleasantly surprised that they recognized us and gave us the rebate. So good work on the staff.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Hayden and Dan. And I'm now going to ask Mike McDaniel, who's our president and general manager of the Coast Mountain Bus Company, to come and sort of give us his report.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Desmond, and members of staff and public here in attendance. Thank you for having us. We're going to run you through a brief report on Coast Mountain Bus Company for Q1 of 2019. We have 6 items that are going to come up today. Safety trends, access transit service delivery, an update on that. Very exciting about our battery electric bus pilot that is coming up very soon. Onboard technology asset program, OTAP is what we call it. And our apprenticeship program graduates and our transit security being recognized, similar to what BCRTC said. So moving along to our first, we have 2 of our safety KPIs. These are focusing on our employees. You have 2 on the screen. The first one on the left is operator assaults. In previous, obviously, I've come to the board and let you know that our trend was in the right direction and going down. For Q1 of 2019, we have seen a spike in these. Before getting into some of the detail, what I can tell you is that it does look like an isolated spike. Our data for April and May have come in better, more favorable. We have obviously looked at different reasons for those, and we're still focused on that. It is obviously not a direction that we like to see it go, but we are focused on that. What I can tell you about it is it seems like the spike has predominantly been in two areas, downtown Vancouver and Coquitlam. Most of those assaults happen actually during the daytime hours, in the afternoon rush. They skew through the week, peak on Friday, and we're looking at that data to try to see if we can understand more about that so we can work on prevention. What we're doing now until the end of this year is we're doing workshops in our depots and a safety campaign targeting our operators, talking about violent incident prevention. I've talked to the board before about that program that we finished the first 3-year cycle on up to the end of 2018. We're not running that in 2019, but we are doing isolated parts to that at depots, as well as we're preparing for 2020 and a full refresher training program, which will obviously involve violent incident prevention, among other components as well. In the coming months, of course, we've talked about this a number of times. We do have the green light for 2 separate capital projects that will put 400 new operator protection barriers on our existing fleet. And previously reported, I think Mr. Dinwiddie, you questioned this. We had mentioned that in 2027, we would only have a percentage of our fleet completed. We actually, that was an error. We actually will have 100% of our conventional fleet completed in 2027 with all protection barriers on our existing fleet, and obviously new ones that come in have those. So we are proceeding with that project as well. Now turning our attention to the second bar chart that you have there for work safe lost time incidents. Again, not in the right direction, but what I can tell you is that this is a bar chart that shows incidents accepted by WorkSafe BC, not submitted. Our submitted claims are actually decreasing, but our accepted claims as a percentage are increasing. It's something that we're watching. It is not something we're discounting, but it is something that we're watching. What I can tell you today, and we've talked about this before, is that we've implemented a couple new things over the last number of months. One was we have mandatory wellness checks for our operators following a critical incident. So we have trained 280 staff in mental health first aid. If an operator experiences some sort of incident where they feel they need to go home, they are required to see one of these 280 staff across a variety of departments prior to going home. We know that the sooner that you interface with somebody that's gone through that, the better their health is, the quicker. So we've implemented that as a new policy. That started just a number of weeks ago. And of course, we're going to move forward on that as we go. So that's a big step forward, and we'll look for these numbers to improve in the future. So turning our attention now from our employees to our customers. Pedestrian incidents with bus contact for the first quarter is on the left bar chart. Again, unfortunate to report that we do have a spike there in Q1 as well relative to Q1 for the previous 4 years. When we looked at this information, we wanted to obviously understand it. We wanted to see where the spikes were coming from. On average, we have about 2 to 3 of these a month on average historically. In the month of January, we had 8. In the month of February, we had 9. Back to the month of March, we had 3. It leveled off in March, and it has for April and May as well. So not to sound redundant, but it does look like an isolated spike. We did look at other things affecting the system at the time, and in January alone, even though the February was not great due to the snow, a particular date in January, we actually had 4 of these incidents on one day, a particularly rainy day. So we want to spend time, obviously, with our staff talking about how to handle those inclement weather days, and we will continue to do that. We have rolled out a safety campaign in March, which we mentioned prior at the last board meeting. And it coincided with a policy where we banned 100% of all electronic devices. Prior to that, there was use of earbuds as well as smartwatches. We've banned those completely. We rolled that out a number of months ago, and that's gone actually quite well. That really has brought us in line with the rest of the industry, and so we needed to move in that direction. Your second bar chart on the right is onboard injury claims, and there we are continuing to trend in the right direction. So moving over to Access Transit Service Delivery update. This one here, a various story here. One, we continue to work with the Handy Dart Riders Alliance. We've had 4 roundtable discussions with them. They've all gone well, and the purpose of those was to obviously gain input from them, but also provide information to them. And so we've talked about everything from the complexity of the service to the challenges, and of course changes that we've already implemented since First Transit took over mid last year. We've also, in this area, made strides on the taxi end. This month we are conducting a taxi survey. Everybody that takes a taxi as part of a Handy Dart trip gets a survey question. We want to understand how to better increase the customer experience around those taxi trips. I think what maybe isn't intuitive in our system is that we run approximately 25% of our trips between the times of 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. every single day. It's disproportionate, and so because of that, we need supplementary taxi trips. We are in the early stages of having some discussions around some of those programs that all start at different times, but all finish at about the same time, and we're trying to see if we can move that system. That will be a difficult challenge, but we're trying to see if we can move that system to spread that out throughout the day. But that is one of the challenges that we have. And of course, the mix of the fleet is important to us. This is what a lot of paratransit agencies are doing across the globe, is making sure they have the right fleet mix, the right sizes to better provide service for paratransit. So as I said before, this is an exciting time period. We're in the home stretch. The first charger was put in a number of weeks ago. The second charger is being installed literally as we are having this conversation. The buses are here, they're ready to go, and so once we complete our training, a couple other parts to our project, we'll be launching this in mid-summer, and we're very much excited about that. Again, on the 100 line, it will start with 4 buses, and it will continue on with more buses as we go forward. So a little bit of information here on technology in the fleet. Now this is a major project. This is essentially everything that is smart on a bus. Hardware, software, it is getting upgraded. We're doing a demo of 97 buses, 30 existing, 67 new. They're going to run in the pilot. What this results in is better communication between our transit operator and our transit communications, and ultimately to our customers. And so this is a major upgrade. With the successful completion of a pilot, we will roll out the rest of the technology upgrade to the rest of our 1,500 fleet. Now, getting to the last 2 slides, our apprenticeship program. To say this program is a huge success is an understatement. We have about 45 students enrolled at any given time. May 15th, we had 14 of them graduate. I was lucky to be there for their graduation. In a time where it is increasingly difficult to find great staff and keep great staff, especially skilled labor. This program, I wish it was bigger, and we talk about that daily. It is a huge success. And what I can tell you is that this program has been going on for years, decades actually. And what we know is that a very high proportion of the people that graduate from this have jobs with us and keep jobs with us and retire with us. And so it is a great program, and I want to thank the management team that are champions for that, and our technical trainers that drive this program. It is a huge success, and it will continue to be very important. Now, as SkyTrain ended with theirs, we will end with ours as well. We had 5 staff members on our transit security officer side that helped in the unfortunate event in January. Transit Police recognized them at their gala. Officers Doug Fergus, Nick Kelloff, Dale Mackey, Jeff Kim, and Bobby Chan all helped out. They stepped up. As is their job, but they stepped up and they were recognized. We're very proud of them, and we want to thank them. So, and we're happy that Transit Police took the time to single them out as well. And that concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike, for that report. I see that Larry has a question for you.
The new
Yeah.
simulator is now in action with the training, I understand. How is it changing? How is it changing the training? Is it making it more expedient? I know we're training more than ever before. Is it really helping us to move people through and getting them out into their jobs?
Yeah, the simulator is the great part about it is we have access to it whenever we want. The challenging part is that we have one. And so we are building it into our training. Our current training right now, as of today, is a little bit more, it's proactive on the new hire side, it's reactive on the existing side, but we're building that along with our LMS, which is our kind of e-training, video training that we will be doing for 2020 that I mentioned. And so it'll be a more holistic training. There'll be classroom, simulator, on route, and LMS as well as part of this new training as we go forward. So it's really rounding things out, and we're looking forward to 2020 when we can launch the full refresher training program.
Great. Andy and then Murray.
Thanks, Mike. I've got two questions for you. Congratulations on the apprentice program. I have a question about that. Is apprenticeships in heavy trades is a male-dominated field, and I notice on the photograph they are all males.
Yeah.
Wondering if there's been any thought on outreach. I've done some work with women in trade programs recently. Is this a direction that Coast Mountain is actively pursuing to try and see an increase in the gender diversity in these fields?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when we've talked about gender diversity, we haven't specifically targeted apprentice programs, so we obviously can bring that into the conversation. We've talked about it from a resourcing standpoint in its entirety. And in a variety of conversations we've had of late and plan to with TransLink HR, I think a number one message that we've been sending is that with the growth, with the attrition as well, Kevin mentioned it early just around operators, but through our entire organization, we need to do things, we need to do more things. Our demand is outstripping what our programs are producing on the recruitment resourcing and including apprenticeship. So we will be doing that for all of the right reasons going forward. I can't tell you we've had specific ones on the trade side, but we will put that into the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And the second part is I was just looking in the comments in your written submission here about the low carbon fleet strategy, where you said they may include refining battery electric bus charging systems in the to meet the low carbon fleet strategies. Is that going forward, or is that impacting the ones that we're using on the test, or both?
Yeah, so the low carbon fleet strategy is a grander plan. It's the master plan of doing that. The pilot right now is en route charging. It's quick charging. It's about a 5-minute charge. As we go forward and plan the whole low carbon fleet strategy, both en route and in depot will be looked at, because depending on the location either that they're coming from or going to, one will lend better to en route, one will lend better to in depot. That study is well underway. There's a lot of information coming out of late, but it is really still taking shape with some essential decisions in the next year coming forward, which will answer all of those questions. So right now, the pilot is an en route plan.
Great. Murray?
Thank you, Mike. Just a question. I've asked this in previous reports at previous board meetings, but the handy dart numbers in relation to riders that we're accommodating. Last time I asked, it was that we didn't have enough drivers to have all the buses on the road,
Yep.
and therefore we're using taxis to supplement what was available in terms of the vehicles that we operate. And I'm still seeing that there's first of all, we're not meeting the target number, and the taxi numbers still remain higher than what we were anticipating in the budgeting process. And it suggests to me that we've got more capacity than we have demand, and that there's still a discrepancy between how we budget and how the service is rolled out in relation to the mix between buses or our vehicles and taxis. So can you just give me some information about that?
Yeah, the ratio between buses and taxis is something we talk about a lot. I think, in my report I mentioned part of the idiosyncrasies with the service is that it's not evenly distributed. And so what you'll see is that if you were to see a breakdown of taxi usage, obviously taxi usage goes up dramatically during the day at our peaks. So we're trying to level that off a little bit, and if we can level it off, we can actually provide more trips through the actual Handy Dart vehicles versus taxi. I think that's a longer solution versus a short term, although we're talking about it increasingly. I think in terms of the total number, what I can tell you is Handy Dart is fully staffed up now. They did have a deficit of about 40 operators when they took over, and they closed that gap about a month ago, so recently still. They're also very new though, and so the efficiency of staff still needs to build a bit. We are working on also dispatching and scheduling. I would say it's safe to say there are continued inefficiencies in that process. And Kathy and her team there are working with the First Transit team to find how to make the transactions that are there less touches, because there are some situations where there are 27 touches to a particular thing, and it is being straightened out, but we have a bit of ways to go on that. So I will say that that's going to improve, but we still need a bit more time.
I could just, Murray, I just want to add a couple other things to that. So, in fact, demand outstrips supply, and that's sort of a truism in public transportation anyway, and that's true in Handy Dart. So even as taxis are about 11% or so of the trips, 11 or 12% of the trips, there's probably always going to be a role for it. So, how do you find the right balance? It provides the supplement that you need to operate to meet the demand as effectively as possible for the users. So finding the right balance is always an important piece. I think they've done a nice job with First to get staffed up and get all the vehicles in service. But you have other dynamics that Mike touched upon that we need to continue to work on. The mayor's plan does continue to assume a rollout of more and more Handy Dart hours. So that is funded additional increases through 2021, and if Phase 3 is approved, there will be further increases in the Handy Dart budget. But that doesn't mean that taxi service will go away. You'll always have that as something of the supplement.
I guess the reason I'm raising the point isn't well, first of all, it's the visual, that it looks like we're providing fewer rides than we anticipated we would need to provide. And then I guess my other comment is maybe what we need to look at aspirationally, it may be a good target to say this is the number of taxi rides we're going to have to deliver versus bus rides. But is there a need to sort of reconsider how we're budgeting so that we don't set unfair expectations as to how many rides will in fact be delivered by bus versus taxi? Because I think we create circumstances for ourselves sometimes by being overly optimistic and then being criticized for overusing taxis. So I think that's where, from my perspective, it is important for us to be real about it as well. So I recognize the aspirational side of it, but in relation to sort of the perceptions that then we're somehow overutilizing taxis tends to be the byproduct of our budgeting process. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Larry?
Well, the consumer issue on the use of taxis, putting aside the budget issue, was the complaints about the level of service. And I know that was a huge part of the review and a big dedication of time thinking of customer service. Are the complaints going down with the taxi service that people are still using as compared to what we were seeing before?
I would say they're marginally going down. I think we've made a lot of progress in that area, but I think we have a ways to go. We are having quarterly meetings with the two taxi associations now, and I would say that we're gaining some traction with them in terms of what we're asking them to do, because it is a quality of service complaint. It's not a vehicle complaint; it's a quality of service and a staff training complaint. And so we've been working with them. We have a ways to go on it, but we've got some traction now, and I think they're buying into it more. And we'll continue to work. We have a variety of programs we may want to implement with them, and we're very deep into those conversations. They haven't quite been implemented, and potentially at a future meeting I can come back and explain some of those.
So how much training of those drivers is actually being done?
Yeah, I can't give you the exact amount of hours or time, but I think in the end, what it is it's not enough for the result that we're looking for. And I think we're wanting the taxi companies to buy into that. And I think they're starting to. And we're going to work collaboratively with them on how to get there.
And I think, because I think one of the problems is not just that you have taxi drivers who need training, it's that the way that culture works is that new taxi drivers are coming in and out of these individually owned taxis, literally daily. And we've got to find a way to give basic training to anyone who is behind the wheel, and somehow get to the place that you don't get behind the wheel unless you've done that training, because otherwise our customers are just not going to be accepting of this service, even though it is the stopgap that we must have, as Kevin said. So I really want us to emphasize that training of those taxis. We keep hearing the complaints.
We will continue to emphasize that. Thank you.
Okay, Karen and then Ann.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Mike. I have a question about accidents involving pedestrians. And I may have asked this question before. When we revisit why the accident happened and what the circumstances were, do we also revisit kind of what's happening around on the sidewalk, the street, and liaise with the city? Sometimes there could be lighting issues. You mentioned the rain. It's dark and rainy so much of the year. Do we have any leverage with the city to improve lighting where it isn't necessarily a TransLink responsibility, but we can put pressure on the city to perhaps better markings for crosswalks, lighted crosswalks, things like that? And do we do that as part of our kind of follow-up from a pedestrian-related accident?
Yeah, I think your question really pertains to, do we take a holistic look at it internally and externally? And we do. Yeah. We don't have a lot of time always to report all of that. We talk about splitting them into preventable and non-preventable, but we don't, when we think it's non-preventable, we don't disregard those. We look at them, we investigate them, we plan. It changes our training, it changes our communication, it changes how we might approach safety programs either internally and externally. What you'll see in the winter program coming forward, you're used to the winter weather campaign that we have, which is very snow-based, because as we've heard today, snow really affects our system significantly. But what we do know, because many of us have lived here for a long time, is that you can go through a winter of 5 months and it could snow a couple of times, but it's dark and rainy almost every other day. So on the internal side and the external side of the pedestrian campaign, we'll be rolling out a secondary part of our winter preparedness campaign that will focus on it's dark, it's rainy, it's hard to see everybody. And that's come from the analysis that you're asking if we're doing, and we are, and it's changing how we're approaching things in the future. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I guess my question is really around, are we also then pushing cities to improve lighting or markings, or investigating why someone moved into the roadway when perhaps they shouldn't have in that spot?
If those are parts of the accident,
Okay.
that absolutely we are.
Yeah. And
yes.
are we getting a response from the cities that?
I think we are, yeah. I mean, we're in active conversations with cities
Great.
about a variety of things. So yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Ann? You might want to put your mic on. I don't think they can hear you.
We've actually had some good reports to the Finance Committee about the work we're doing with cities in partnerships. So those have been very valuable to see the extent of our collaboration and cooperation on areas of shared responsibility. We can't manage all variables, but we need to work. And you are reporting well to the Finance Committee about what's being done to manage those variables, so thank you for those reports. My question has to do with first comment and praise. I've noticed that the operators are very good at making sure people are securely holding on as they move through the bus when they start to move. And I've been very cognizant of that as I get older, that they watch to make sure that I'm holding on before I sit down, although I don't think I'm nearly old enough to be worried about. My question is about schedules. The public want the bus to appear on time. And so there could be a risk that drivers, for example, are a little more aggressive about going through yellow lights and the like. So what kinds of instructions do we give operators about schedule versus safe driving? What are they told about that?
Well, it's an easy question, although a complicated answer is that obviously safety is first, and that will never waver. We will not sacrifice safety for anything. The system obviously works in a rhythm that's out there that has 1,500 buses rolling all day long, and as you heard from one of the speakers today, it upsets customers when a particular bus doesn't reach another connection. So we are still trying to manage the system. So we do obviously do a lot of analysis on what time a route should take, how long it should take. It takes into account data, historical data that is mountains high. But there are things that happen on the system that we can't plan for, and they are spikes. And so we always say to our operators, and the rest of our staff for that matter, safety is absolutely first. Second is everything else, is the service to the service or the experience the customer is having, which includes on-time performance among a variety of things. So I hope that answers your question. I don't want to for a second think that we are rushing people through the system. It is a big system that we run, but safety is first, and it will continue to be.
Okay, that's great. Well, Mike, thank you for the answers, and thank you to the board for those great questions. So I'm going to now ask Chief Dave Jones to come to the table and provide us with his report. So, welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members, Mr. Desmond, staff, and those others in the room. I'm going to start off the presentation by just basically giving a rundown about the first 60 days of coming into it, although I've hit about the 90 mark. I've got the slide here. My first comments on the first 60 days here has been extremely impressed with the staff, not only who I get to work with, and I say that work with, it's not about leading down in the transit police, but throughout the organization, who have been welcoming, helpful, and that it is a very complex organization and enterprise as all the pieces fit together, but people have gone out of their way to make it welcoming and provide guidance and advice in coming in. I was also happy when I came in and noticed in the first 30 days that ridership satisfaction was up, crime was down, so obviously I had a good start. Right? Like to have that. Apparently that impact may have started a bit before myself. Within it, there's some areas that were in place and we continue to look at and go with. As you know, a couple of years ago, they started working on or developed a new service delivery model for policing. That saw the introduction of 6 NPOs and hub locations where officers would focus, and we would place these neighborhood police officers into there. They've been, and from my view, they're very effective, very useful, and when we get to see the community interactions like you see at the top of the event there, that's the Vasaki parade on the left. So in my first few days was participating in Vancouver, we crossing through 23 different communities and having that involvement, as was described earlier, I think by Mr. Beasley there in the period of time, how the region functions. It's not just one set of people we're talking to. We're talking to a variety of communities who hold different events, have different expectations, and would like to see different activities or responses from us. And when I say that, it's the members who get out and deliver that for us in terms of it. So when I say the service delivery model, it's been in place for a while. We'll be reviewing that coming up. It'll take place over the next about year, where we'll take a look at how it has been working. And that feedback isn't just internally. It's a look at from the public's point of view, from our members' point of view, from our partners' point of view, and that. So we really look forward to that as we went. And what other way to begin the day is to actually have the transit police show their value to the region. That was a serious incident in Vancouver at one of their universities and it was the result of 2 of the more alert members out in the Surrey area who caught the individual who had placed what was seen to be some explosive devices in Vancouver, but the system worked that day. The system came together in terms of us being able to use our knowledge and tools for us to obtain information from the Vancouver police getting it out and others, and it was a really successful show of how somebody doing something in one region, leaving through the region on the transportation, but then being able to be apprehended in a short period of time. So hats off to those members. We're very pleased to announce that Constable Harms, who had been hurt in January's incident in Surrey, has returned to work. He still has some physio aspects to deal with his hand and arms, but he's back to work. He's excited to be there and looking forward to coming back out onto the road in terms of it. And then, of course, one of the things, and we know this is important, and I talked about coming here, and I'll touch on it a bit in another slide or two, is the safety of the passengers in the system. We're not so much about the maintenance other than, helping out or pointing out things that we can. But there's several parts to that. And part of that is it not only being safe, but also the reputation and perception of safety. Those are very key things to ourselves. And we never, we don't want to put out things that are inaccurate or whatever, but we do need to put out and make sure we're getting what the role and the job and what is occurring within making the system safe out. And I'm really pleased to see that in the last little while, I think we hit the front page of the province twice in the last 6 weeks with positive stories about the role of transit police in general and the use of the canine dogs and in their very specific role for us in making the system safe. And then even as of last night, there was a Twitter account, news media here in Vancouver with about over 250,000 followers that put out another positive article that was unsolicited, both on the stats and events that had been happening. So in general, the first 60 days have been busy. It's been not only where you think you're settling in, we also know, as you would well know, that there's growth in the system occurring. And so while you're trying to get used to everything, the system's about to change and grow. One of the issues, though, we do talk about, and this came up before, and this is being presented here today. It's an initiative we're trying to address, and it's one for awareness, and it's one that covers off just on safety and the safety aspect. Now, in early 2018, it was also spoke about, and a lot of municipalities will experience metal theft as part of it, construction sites, salvaging sites. But one of the things we have experienced is wire theft of overhead trolley lines. And the reason we bring this to individuals' attention is it sometimes doesn't get the attention from the public because there's no real disruption in services. The transit buses can continue to operate by just running on battery power where the line is missing and it keeps going. Whereas when neighborhoods that you may be familiar with have telephone lines stolen or electrical line and you lose your power to homes or your telephone service goes out, it really gets the attention and perhaps an awareness from the public to be alert to this. So this is, I'm going to show a video here that comes up. It's one that we'll be playing onto our website and through social media and hopefully touching out onto the members of the media to distribute it even further. And what the goal of this is making it aware. And you'll see in the video that it's like, what does a transit service vehicle look like? So if it's somebody else in just a pickup truck with a ladder in the back, that might not be a transit service vehicle. And just looking for people to provide that level of awareness to call the police at times, because the theft can happen very quickly. So.
Trolley buses are an integral part of Vancouver's transit system. Operating since 1948, these buses run using a network of wires suspended above many of Vancouver's major city streets. These essential cables are also a target for thieves, presenting a significant danger to the public due to wires left hanging above city streets and sidewalks. Trolley wires carry 600 volts of electricity, and contact with these live wires is likely to lead to a fatality. In 2018, Coast Mountain Bus Company recorded over 24 thefts of copper wire from overhead trolley wires, most incidents occurring between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. There are common locations which are targeted multiple times. An official Coast Mountain Bus Company trolley repair vehicle will look like this. If you see other suspicious vehicles or activities involving trolley wires that do not fit this description, particularly during the hours of 12 a.m. and 6 a.m., or see evidence of a wire theft having taken place, do not try to intervene if an active theft is occurring, and do not touch the down wire in any circumstance, staying back at least 10 meters. These are very serious crimes that have the potential to put lives at risk, so if you see any suspicious activity regarding trolley wires, call 911, call the Transit Police Tips Line, text Transit Police, or report anonymously to Crime Stoppers.
So as you'll see, our aim in this is a little bit of an education and awareness, and it ends obviously with who to contact and allow to, I guess, respond accordingly to it. There was responses years ago to the whole issue of metal theft. The provincial government introduced more regulations around metal dealers and scrap dealers taking in identification. That still presents a challenge to just about everyone, that not everyone's in compliance with it, because it's seen that people come in with scrap items. And there have been some changes in other trades or that. I think some cities now use like an aluminum wiring, or companies will use it that has lesser value in that. But the hope of distributing this, one is to get some information that will lead to an end of it, and and just make people aware of it, because there does come with a risk of a live wire being on the ground in terms of it. I got my own clicker. So the next one here is we'll be starting up to look at our current strategic plan, ends at the end of 2020, and part of it is going forward is for us to look at our service delivery model and prepare to get input. And obviously our plan, covering so many communities and looking both internally with our own staff, the boards, staff within the enterprise, is to build a plan that goes along with what is the plan for TransLink. It's expansion, it's upgrades to services, change in services. We're trying to also focus on three key objectives, which is to deliver a safe and secure transit system, build confidence in the use of transit, which is that perception of it and reputation of it, and provide regional services that enhance local policing and community safety. So that, if you look at in the middle there, I speak about, we attended 369 community events last year. So when you look at that, that is more than one a day that our members are out there, and they go, and people, a lot of time we focus on the rail aspect of us and where we're at. But I know in the last couple of weeks, we've seen them in places like Pitt Meadows Days and other locations where we're going to find transit users using the system, and that being the buses. And there's a presence that is known, including up in the C-Bus, Lonsdale, the Phipps interchange area, where they try to interact with the public and with the local agencies, jurisdictional police, to create a good relationship and understanding of what any safety concerns are in that area. So when we look at this, in the plan as we're rolling it out here, another one was the use of, and was a newspaper article that had been placed out there, was our explosive scent dogs. So that's the picture on the right there. That's a collection of 6 dogs. They are trained in explosive scent. A reality is that it is an area, a very public area, that we want to ensure is safe. In fact, they're also used by other agencies. We saw that at this exact location when there was a scare in the last month, where they were able to clear the building very quickly by being of assistance to them. What is really impressive here is that the transit police are the first in Canada to deploy dogs that are trained in such a manner that's called vapor scent, which is a lot more effective and efficient in the manner in which they do it. In other words, they can walk through the room and detect the scent from about 75 feet away without having sniffed the object, and then they focus in on it. This has been a lot of training and help has been put on by some American police agencies in Washington State and Oregon who have a certification program. Our dogs meet this and exceed the program, but it's here in Canada, we're developing the standards and the certification. So we'll have it and we'll secure it and trademark it and keep it all to ourselves in terms of it. But it's been very helpful with even work at the airport and that. And it's a really exciting and unique opportunity to do things in a quick manner with less disruption. So when we talk about even potential disruption to the services in a transit location, the use of a tool, which what the dogs are, can actually help us clear it quick with confidence in terms of it without spending it. And that has been an effective part of it as well too. So tomorrow all the police agencies in BC want to see the updated action on these dogs. So it'll be a very good thing in terms of what we've seen there too. We also just, when we're looking at the strategic plans and what we do, it's always need to recognize that we're in a diverse environment and we deal with a real diverse client. People use the system for a lot of different reasons: work, pleasure, shopping. We also deal with people who are can be classified as a lot of people in the vulnerable sectors and that. So there's a lot that goes towards making sure that we're able to assist and interact accordingly. I'll go quick on this because you saw it in the other two slides and I took out a picture, is that we did host our awards nights. The picture you just see here, we were very pleased to be able to recognize transit security and to recognize other parts of the enterprise and who had come and assisted, in particular when we had the officer shot. We also able to recognize 7 police officers who have over 20 years, between 20 and 30 years of service with long-serving medals from the Governor General, and a couple of individuals up there who had assisted people, gone out of their way to help people, mainly in the vulnerable sector, who are identified as in need of assistance beyond just being guided on or off, but taking them away, getting them the services they needed. And of course, the lady that's kind of in the middle of the picture there was recognized for actually saving a drowning child while off duty and resuscitating the child. And so we try to look at not only what our members do while they're at work, but what happens off work as well. Last part here is just that training. Training is a very key thing for policing and for everybody. And this is just a sample of some recent courses. But what we really point out is the top one there says it's the Canadian Police College Crisis Negotiators course. The top training facility for policing at the high level is the Canadian Police College located in Ottawa, which runs kind of everything from your forensics and that. We've been encouraging to get them to take courses out of Ottawa so we can be more effective. You can disperse them. It's like cost effective to not have to travel there. So the Canadian Police College ran a 2-week negotiators course here at our office space in the TransLink building. Went extremely well. There were 25 participants from all across the country. They come out, they stay in hotels, they attend the course here, we deliver the facilities and help them out. They've asked to come back already, which is excellent. That meant that we were able to get 6 members on a course, when normally you might get 1 if we had to go to Ottawa on our own. And then what is about crisis negotiators, people think a lot of it as this, hostage taking, and that it's not. That may be the extreme you deal with, but what it deals with a lot is talking to people who are in crisis, and when you come across them on a day-to-day basis, and knowing the skill set, which is our best asset, is being able to vocalize and talk to people who are in crisis, as opposed to having to interject with force or use some other tools or techniques. So I'm real excited to have them here as well. We were also in the year. When it says at the bottom, police leadership, there's a variety. The BCACP is the BC Association of Chiefs of Police. The CACP is the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And what we were able to do in combination with other police forces here was, again, host a leadership program that went over 3 weeks, but hosting it at our office building in a shared manner for 3 weeks allowed us to train 12 of our members, instead of, again, 1 or 2 being sent out, and having that by hosting it here. And the costs are kept down by sharing it, the extra seats. You have up to 36 participants. We take 12, sell off the extra 24 seats to pay the cost down in terms of it. But we're able to look at delivering key, important training that will help the public who we serve, will help the members in their own growth, and allow us to grow as a more, I want to say, mature and professional organization. And with that, it's been a good 87 days so far.
Thank you, Chief Jones, for your report. I noticed there isn't a picture of the swearing-in ceremony, because I had the pleasure of attending that, and I've never seen a room of more smartly dressed men and women, so it was very impressive. So anyway, I know there's some questions for you, starting with Larry.
Chief Jones, welcome.
Thanks.
Excellent report. You started your report by talking about the reputation of safety, and you talked about good news stories, and we all agree with that. But we had a delegate at our last public meeting who just talked about the experience of safety at a particular station. In his case, it was the Royal Oak Station. And we talked about lighting and landscape and other things, but what I think he was really trying to tell us was, can there be people on scene there in order to give people that experience of direct safety? So I have really two questions. One is, have we been able to put more people near or in the vicinity of that station in order to try to deal with that sense of safety or lack of safety there? That's number one. And number two, elsewhere in the policing industry, as you well know, neighborhood safety offices and the use of local volunteers is a very good way to enhance the system and enhance that experience of safety. And what would you think of the possibility of adding a volunteer group that would be located in troublesome areas, almost like hosts that could augment that the eyes on the street? So I'd love your response to both of those questions.
Sure. On the first one with Royal Oak, we've been made aware of it, and so there's another committee that we also host, which is the Transit Chiefs of Police Community Council. I think I've got the title right. And what we're doing is we're working both with Burnaby, the local, and their representative from there to speak specifically, because one of the issues we sometimes face is that we can make the transit station very safe, but people feel uncomfortable coming to the station. Yeah. So what we have to define is, what is our area of response? I call there's a clear area where we're responsible for. Then there's the next level of area where we could go into, I'd say, independently and advising the next agency or local jurisdiction. And then the shared, now we need to be working together. And so that is what's happening at Royal Oak right now. And part of that is the use of CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, speaking to the city of Burnaby. And of course, we're watching the stats and trying to figure out what is the issue of it. So if it feels unsafe, then sometimes the person being there will create safety for some people. But the other one is how can we use either technology, equipment, lighting, or just simple design to make it feel safer. Yep. So that Royal Oak is being looked at with that, and there's a very active community person up there who I speak to on a weekly basis. So we're quite happy to be doing that. When you speak to the use of volunteers, it's something that's topical with the board, the police board as well. We are looking at a tiered model of within the policing itself. You touched on one is the use of volunteers, and what we're seeing in other communities, you'll see things like community safety officers, personnel. So that is actively being pursued as a top priority right now. And I could tell you, without going too far, is that the reception that as of recently has been well received by the members, the police association, and that. So we're hoping that will be something that we're able to announce by the fall of this year in terms of it. Volunteers unto themselves it's an interesting, because we go through so many communities. The one thing that people do in their own, when you have a city with a defined geographical boundaries, you can recruit volunteers within your community and that. So one of the first things for us to look at right now is looking within those cities where they have volunteers. So we have Constable Jenny Chung here, who has the Burnaby, Lougheed out to Evergreen area, who's so involved with the communities up there. I don't know if she ever takes a day off, but is to hopefully partner with the Burnaby volunteer groups, the Coquitlam, the Port Moody volunteer groups there, to get them involved. Because volunteers truly want, I would call, like some meaningful stuff to do, and they're looking for that. And so our ability to work with their volunteers and get kind of co-deliver programs that meet the needs will be important. And a lot of that happens in the Surrey area. The Surrey crime prevention volunteers work a lot between the stations with our members up in that area. So we have, the challenge would be for us to start our own volunteer program, is how many diverse programs, and then the coordinators, like just locations and the recruitment of them would present it, but it's not off the table.
Great. Mr. Chair, I think we should feed back the information that the chief identified in the first part of his answer to that delegate that was here last time. Sure. He came in with very good intentions. He was very honest about what he was telling us, and I think he deserves that kind of answer, that we are actively dealing with it.
If he can, and if he's not, if it's a gentleman, it won't be the lady, because it's a lady I'm dealing with, but even if you have his information and sending it to myself, we'll make sure we reach out to him.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the chief? Seeing no hands, thank you very much for your report.
Thank you very much.
Great. So we'll move on to the next item in the agenda, and we have first the consent agenda for a number of reports. Actually, maybe, Ann, did you want to maybe speak to the consent agenda items, just as the start of your report? Because I know there's a decision that's required under the Treasury resolutions.
Maybe just that one, although Christine is here and may also prefer to speak to it. But the board has been provided in advance with a number of Treasury resolutions and financial risk management policies that will reflect the replacement of titles. There having been a change in staff and titles in the area of finance.
Yeah. So it was pretty straightforward.
Yes.
So I don't think there's
so
any
the
questions
result
on that.
is to approve a change to titles, and we have excellent staff in place to fill the roles. It's just a change of how they're named and framed in the policies. So I'm happy to take any questions or concerns that may arise as a result of the recommended changes.
I see that Murray has a question.
Not on that specific report, but I was, just a general question, probably could have raised it at the Finance Committee or the Planning Committee, but the Botello Bridge replacement project, which is under the jurisdiction of the province, I just wanted confirmation that it's proceeding in a timely way to replacement to meet the deadline that we had been working toward as a result of the condition of the current bridge.
Turn that thing off. Someone should turn that one off. The answer is yes. So they're in the procurement process now, and I believe the province is still targeting 2023 for the replacement of the bridge.
Okay, and the next three items are just reports that I think Zandy is here if there's any questions, but I think they're all pretty straightforward. So seeing no hands, if I can have someone move the consent agenda. Murray, second by Harj, all in favor? Okay, unanimous, thank you. And now, Ann, we'll just go to you for your report on the Finance and Audit Committee.
Certainly, in the interest of time, I'll keep it short. The committee has been meeting and with great regularity and covering substantive issues that are being handled ably by staff. So we have had a particular focus, as may be evident to people attending this meeting, on safety, and which falls within the purview of the committee, and are witnessing a real endeavor and lots of work by management to regularize the commitment to safety in the form of goals and strategies and systems that will enhance safety for the staff and for users of the systems and for members of the public as well. And it's been the experience of all of us that this kind of focus on safety has spin-off benefits in terms of better treatment of our equipment, less and a better system overall. So we're looking forward to seeing a great increase in our safety commitment and related statistics. We've received and discussed a number of capital and engineering reports for major capital projects, including the Broadway Subways project update, the Surrey Langley SkyTrain project update, and Expo Millennium upgrade program status update as well. We have had a number of reports on ongoing work in the area of real estate and procurement, including the new SkyTrain Operations and Maintenance Centre, which is an ongoing project, receiving updates on our real estate holdings and management and transactions. And we also meet regularly with internal audit, and we've had good reports about internal audit projects ensuring the governance of this organization and addressing any issues that need to be, focusing on issues that need to be addressed. We've also received from Christine Dacre, our CFO and VP Financial Services, review of compliance with statutory and regulatory requirements so that we as directors can be assured, and staff can be assured, and the public can be assured, and governments can be assured that we are doing as we need to do in accordance with statutes and regulations that govern TransLink. We reviewed recently the 2018 Financial and Information Act filing that is required to be filed by this organization and approved it. We also review and approve enterprise risk management processes and receive quarterly reports on risk management and how it's handled, as well as a related issue of the enterprise insurance program. And also within the purview of the committee is business technology. So we receive regular reports on information technology projects and how they're getting along, as well as enterprise resource planning, which is a large exercise to make sure that the resources of this large organization, multifaceted organization, are deployed as they should be now and into the future. Those are our main areas of focus. I'm happy to take any questions. I know staff is in the room as well.
Any questions for Anne? Sounds like a very busy agenda. Seeing none, there is a scheduled break, but seeing that we're just a few minutes behind schedule, unless there's violent objection, I would recommend we just continue because we just have a few more items on the agenda. So Larry, I'll turn it to you to give us an update on the Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee.
Thank you. We had a meeting on June the 11th, and a number of the items that are next on the agenda were covered by our committee at the time. And on one of those, 6.4, we do have a minor amendment to the resolution, but otherwise those will be dealt with by the staff in a few minutes. In addition to that, we did deal with one other independent transit service proposal. We didn't feel it was yet ready to recommend for approval, and so we sent that back for some further evaluation. We also had a good discussion about the transit service partnerships, the idea of having partners with us to deliver better transit services and more wholesome transit services. And we gave our advice to the committee on a study that is just beginning and will, I think, yield for us really helpful things in the future in terms of support for better transit. We also received a regional parking study that was done by Metro and TransLink. And the interesting thing in that study, which is worth noting, is that parking use or parking demand everywhere is down. We seem all over the region to still have parking requirements that are higher than the public is actually needing, and that's a downward trend which is typical. And it opens up possibilities, particularly for, we were advised, particularly for the Transport 2050 work in terms of shifting resources perhaps away from auto parking to other kinds of mobility investment needs. We also dealt with the Handy Dart Users Advisory Committee membership appointments, and later in our meeting today we have recommended the staff's recommendation of 13 people to form that membership committee that were very carefully vetted, and that'll be dealt with later today. We also had an update on the new mobility analysis and work that's being done, and we felt really good to see that our staff are right at the forefront of really understanding new mobility and how it's going to interface with other policies and initiatives in the new plan. In addition to all that, we had a number of reports related to communications and public affairs. We had a review of our communication policy, which was in part to identify the role of members of the board in communications as compared to the role of staff and others as well. We had an update on the South of Fraser Rapid Transit public engagement, which we were very happy to see was a really, really wholesome public engagement. You've already heard from our CEO about the thousands of people involved, and that was a good thing. We had an update also on late night service review, a general update on Transport 2050, and then 2 quarterly reports on public engagement and communications, both of which showed really through a lot of initiatives the outreach that TransLink is now doing to people of Vancouver and our customers. And as the customer services or customer and stakeholder relations committee, we were really feeling positive about the improvements and initiatives that are widely across our relationship with the public in Greater Vancouver. So those are the updates, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Larry. Any questions for Larry? Seeing none, we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is a report from Jeff Cross on the independent transit service application from the Stevenson Shuttle.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. The report is in your package, along with the proposed resolution, which coincidentally is for an ITS that would run from the nearby station of Lansdowne through to Steveston. As you're aware, on an ITS, this is an independent transit service. It's sort of categorized as something that is either bus or rail that's operating within our region and not by TransLink or any of our subsidiaries, in which case it's under the auspices of the board to determine as such, and really look at two tests. One is on the impact on the financial viability of our system, as well as the effectiveness on the regional transportation system. As you see, our analysis in the report, that we say that on the financial element, it would be very minimal. It's operating free and just on weekends over the course of about 10 weeks. And statutory holidays on a low frequency, connecting destinations that right now along a route that we do not do, between Lansdowne and the Richmond Oval and down to Steveston. And then on the effectiveness, we would say that that's actually a positive. It's not, we don't offer that kind of seasonal service on weekends, so it's an enhancement, I would say, for options for travelers and tourists specifically, which is how this is oriented. There are a couple conditions that are identified in there that are consistent with what we do for all ITSs, which are to look at what the ridership would be. So we want to get the data to understand what the demand looks like, as well as that this is just a 2019 approval if you go forward with that. I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Larry?
I'd just like to move the resolution, and I would note that we did, as a committee, request some enhancement to the evaluation for future ITS, but we felt this was just a great one, and so we supported and urged the board to support it.
Great, thanks. Move, is there a second? Second by Murray, all in favor? Thank you, approved unanimously. Thanks, Jeff. You're going to continue on with the next item, which is the appeals process for the Universal Faregate access.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is an information item. This follows up on our introduction of Universal Faregate Access Program, which you approved the fare structure for that a year ago. We had promised that we would come back and let you know what the appeals process would be. That was a question because there is a determination made whether somebody is eligible or not for that. In so doing, we also decided that an appeals process would be appropriate for our Handy Dart service and Handy Card. We did a scan of our peers across Canada, and that informed what we're going forward with at staff level, which includes making sure that there's an access transit delegate, somebody that does the planning. So from my team, that there's somebody from the delivery side, that there is a health professional, and that there's somebody from our user advisory committee that can provide a balanced approach to that. So this is just a bit of housekeeping, but we think it's a really important step that introduces more transparency and accountability into the process than we had had previously.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions for Jeff on this? Just received this for information. Thank you. No, looks like there's no questions for you on this. So we'll go to the next item, Jeff, which is the Transit Fare Review Implementation Update.
Thank you, Chair. So this was actually touched upon during the AGM earlier this morning through some of the questions and the initiatives that we're looking at. What's before you is the actual look for, staff is seeking an endorsement of the work program on how to implement the recommendations that came out of the 2018 Transit Fare Review. Those are included in the report and are really categorized into two definitions. One, the sort of moderate level of effort, things that can be done primarily within the card-based environment that we have now, if the business case looks promising and if funding is available. Some of these things would require funding to go forward. That will be the analysis that we would do as part of a business case. In some cases, that would require collaborations with the provincial government for funding, and then, if that comes to the fore, we would bring it forward to the board and the Mayor's Council for potential funding in a Phase 3 investment plan in the next year or so or beyond. The second category is really the more in-depth process that Kevin described that has to do with, implicit upon that is technological change that is a bit more complicated and also brings together the convergence of three primary things that we're doing. They're the recommendations from the transit fare review, so distance-based pricing and more flexibility in our pass products. The second is this move towards mobility as a service. As you're aware, we're starting to pilot things where we are integrated with Mobi and Evo and Bike Share. So how do we expand that even further? And the other is around our customer experience and using incentives and more tailored rewards in order to be able to incent ridership. So all of those things would converge and would be dealt with in a business case that we would conduct over the course of the next year, and then look at what the funding requirements and technological parameters would be. We want to move as quickly as possible on executing these things. So categorizing them in the two different timescales we think is important, but we want to move post-haste on this.
Larry?
Again, the committee was very positive about this, and I'd like to move the resolution, but the committee did ask that we add 3 words to that resolution as you see it in the package, and that is after the word work program, add as a priority. And the reason that they felt it needed to be added was to make it crystal clear that this was not just business as usual implementation, but that it was going to be seen by the board, not just the staff, and the staff agreed, but seen by the board as a priority, and to try to move as also with some expediency on even the second half, the harder part of it. So we recommend the resolution and request that you add the words as a priority. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm seeing this as a recommendation, but is it an actual resolution, or it is? Okay. So have someone, you're moving that? Is someone going to second that? Second by Andy. All in favor of that? Okay, approved unanimously. Great, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the Transport 2050. And I know that we've spoken to this at the AGM, and I know that's been covered off by Kevin. So Steve is here, obviously, prepared to answer any questions. So maybe we will forgo the presentation, but if there's any questions for Steve on Transport 2050. No? Sorry, Steve. I think unless there's something you wanted to say in addition to I think what's been said already today, but do you have any comments? You have to touch the button. Yeah.
This came up in the AGM when one of the questions around how we're dealing with neighboring jurisdictions, and I do want to reassure the board that we are reaching out to Squamish, Mission, Abbotsford, Chilliwack, and we're having open houses and opening up the survey to those areas as well. So we're welcoming input from those areas of the region as well, because of course their commuters affect our commuter shed as well.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. Next item is the HR and Governance Committee. And under the consent agenda, I don't know, we have the review of the board governance manual and articles. Most of those were just sort of editorial minor with some slight tweaks. I'm not sure, Marcella, if there's anything you wanted to say or on those in terms of discussions in your committee, or?
No, thank you. It's in front of the board. I'm assuming everybody's read it. They're standard amendments we review all the time, and the committee recommends that the board approve the resolution that you find in their material.
So Marcella's going to move that. Andy's going to second. All in favor? Any? No comments? Great. Approved unanimously. Thank you. And then our last item is just a verbal report from the chair of the HR and Governance Committee. So Marcella, I'll give you the floor.
I thank you, and I could keep it really long. Lunch is coming, last part of the meeting, or I'll keep it about 2 minutes. So how about the 2-minute version? We reviewed the pyramid, and under the governance part of our committee, reviewed the governance initiatives and went through that with management. We obviously reviewed the governance manual, and we reviewed board competencies and spoke about the screening panel process. And at this moment, that is about the content. Well, I will just say there was one thing. We receive a regular quarterly report from our VP of HR. The report was as standard, nothing particular note, other than to say that the wellness of the organization from a people perspective continues to proceed with a lot of initiatives underway.
Yeah. Great, thank you, Marcella. Any questions for Marcella? Seeing none, I think that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting today. So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to participate and attend. And we'll see you at our next quarterly meeting. Great, thank you.